Hello, my name is Jason Levy, and I'm a senior counsel at Great Gray Group. Since this is my first presentation for RPAG, I wanted to start by introducing myself. Before joining Great Gray, I spent 13 years as a lawyer at a large Washington, D.C. law firm. I had a broad-based employee benefits and executive compensation practice. And during my time at the firm, I had the privilege of working on retirement policy and was involved in securing several significant pieces of legislation, including a provision enacted in Secure 2.0. But a significant part of my practice, and one I enjoyed the most, was advising retirement plans on ERISA investing issues. I was in the room where fiduciary investment committees met with advisors, just like RPAG advisors, to select and monitor plan lineups. And I gave fiduciary trainings in Washington legislative and regulatory updates to the plans. It's a long way of saying I know firsthand the value of fiduciary investment advisors provide to retirement plans. I also know that briefings on the latest legal and regulatory developments enhance the processes employer plan fiduciaries use to be good fiduciaries. So with that, let's dive into the presentation. And I think a top question on the mind of many employer plan fiduciaries and other retirement professionals right now is what to expect in the new administration's Department of Labor's oversight of retirement plans. As background, the Employee Benefits Security Administration, or EBSA, is part of the Department of Labor that oversees ERISA regulation of retirement plans. As with any change in administration, one should expect changes in enforcement priorities and activities. But there still will be continuity. EBSA will continue to pursue bad actors and will enforce the law to protect participants and beneficiaries. Given that continuity, it's instructive to look back at the last year of EBSA activities during the Biden administration. As illustrated on this slide, EBSA maintained a robust enforcement regime. The majority of amounts recovered on the slide came from EBSA investigations, and informal participant complaints are a trigger for those EBSA investigations. 71% of investigations led to the need for corrective action, including additional contributions from the plan sponsor to restore losses. So looking forward to the new administration, recent testimony by Daniel Aronowitz, who has been nominated to lead EBSA, is instructive in anticipating EBSA priorities in the new fiscal year. A key theme of his testimony is his desire to encourage plan sponsors to expand benefits with the assistance from the Department of Labor. In our retirement system, whether or not to offer a retirement plan is a voluntary decision by employers. Mr. Aronowitz emphasized the need to provide regulatory clarity to help well-intentioned employer plan fiduciaries comply with the law, and to help eliminate what he described as ERISA litigation abuse that is turning benefit plans into liability traps. Mr. Aronowitz highlighted areas where DOL can help employers gain regulatory clarity, including several that may be top of mind for employer plan fiduciaries, like the items on the screen. Mr. Aronowitz also highlighted a desire to curb meritless ERISA fiduciary litigation. But this desire may face headwinds, at least in the short term, because of the recent Cunningham versus Cornell Supreme Court decision. This decision may make it easier for plaintiffs to bring ERISA claims for violation of the prohibited transaction rules. The prohibited transaction rules are designed generally to protect plan participants from transactions that could give rise to a conflict of interest. For example, it's a prohibited transaction for a fiduciary to cause a plan to engage in a transaction with the service provider. But there's a corresponding prohibited transaction exemption for this very common scenario that permits such transactions if the services were necessary for the operation of the plan and were for no more than reasonable compensation. In the Cunningham decision, the court held that plaintiffs could state a claim and potentially survive a motion to dismiss merely by alleging the existence of a prohibited transaction. So merely by alleging a transaction between the plan and a service provider, without having to plead the unavailability of a corresponding prohibited transaction exemption. So they did not have to plead here that the services were either not necessary or for unreasonable compensation. So why is this a big deal? Well, once plaintiffs get past a motion to dismiss, it's common for the prospect of costly discovery to exert pressure on plans to settle claims, even if the plans believe that they did nothing wrong. And such settlements can encourage even more ERISA litigation. And on that topic, many in the legal defense bar view forfeiture litigation as an example of an aggressive plaintiffs bar that is targeting well-meaning employer plan fiduciaries. As background, when an employee terminates employment, non-vested portions of the employee's account are subject to forfeiture. The forfeited amounts remain in the plan, and it's been long-standing practice for plans to decide whether to allocate the forfeitures either to reduce future employer contributions or to pay administrative costs. The plaintiffs in the forfeiture litigation cases generally allege that employer plan fiduciaries breach their fiduciary duties and engage in self-dealing in violation of ERISA when it is decided to use forfeitures to reduce employer contributions rather than increase participant benefits by paying administrative costs that otherwise would be charged to the participants. Central to the premise of these lawsuits is that generally, fiduciary obligations arise because an employer plan fiduciary has discretion under the terms of the plan to choose between using either forfeited funds to reduce employer contributions or pay administrative costs. Faced with that choice, a fiduciary would always be required to choose to pay administrative costs, since doing so would be to the financial benefit of plan participants. The district court in the recent HP case that's noted on the screen viewed such an outcome as an overbroad and contrary outcome to long-standing regulatory practice. And as evidenced by an amicus brief recently filed by the Department of Labor in an appeal of this HP case, as well as Mr. Aronowitz's recent hearing testimony, the new EBSA may seek to try to provide relief to employer plan fiduciaries in these lawsuits. But in the meantime, and maybe regardless, these cases speak to the importance of reviewing and possibly updating plan terms concerning forfeitures. As the forfeiture lawsuits illustrate, whether a plan document permits or mandates use of forfeitures can have a significant implication in the event of potential litigation. So as we look at the priorities of a new EBSA, as well as recent litigation trends, it's important to not lose sight of the fact that the ERISA fiduciary standards are unchanged. They are strict and enshrined in law, and that makes the best tips for employer plan fiduciaries and advisors unchanged from year to year, or even from administration to administration. ERISA investment fiduciaries should make investment decisions for the sole purpose of maximizing risk-adjusted financial returns for participants and beneficiaries. And they should document robust processes to support each of these determinations. On the fiduciary administrative side of plan obligations, I'm reminded of the opening line of a Supreme Court case from 15 years ago. People make mistakes, even administrators of ERISA plans. That should come as no surprise given that ERISA is an enormously complex and detailed statute. So advisors can help minimize those mistakes, and plan administrators should have robust processes to do so. But when mistakes inevitably happen, plans should proactively take corrective action, including through DOL and IRS correction programs available to correct common mistakes. So with that, I hope you find these summaries helpful as you engage with clients on how best to satisfy your collective obligations under ERISA.